great, isn't it, to be in God's house this morning? And I hope that for each one of us in here this morning, we've kind of somehow managed to get ourselves into the zone to be ready to hear how God might speak into each one of our lives today. Yeah? I have a message this morning. I just want to encourage you this morning. Is that okay? I've got a message of encouragement for you this morning. You know, I believe God wants to remind us today that, or remind you today. He's reminded me because I wrote the thing, but I really believe that God wants to remind you guys today that nothing can hold you back. Nothing can hold you back. You know, you might be in a situation right now you feel held back. I want to just unpack some things from the scriptures today where I really believe that God gave me a word this morning that nothing can hold you back, no matter what your situation looks like, no matter how difficult it is this morning, no matter how challenged you might be this morning. I want to tell you nothing can hold you back. You know, over the years I've been inspired again and again by the life of Nick Vujicic. I don't know if you've heard of Nick Vujicic. Some of you have. Nick is an Australian-American motivational speaker, goes all over the world. He's an evangelist and he's a motivational speaker. He was born in 1982 in Australia without fully formed limbs and arms, and as a result he was bullied because of it. Really bullied at school, and at one point he considered drowning himself in the bathtub because he was so down, and he was saved, and of course it didn't happen. God had a plan for his life. Yeah, when he was born, the nurse brought him to his mother, and his mum knew what kind of condition he was in because the nurses had pre-warned her, look, he's got no arms and no limbs. And so she didn't want to even see a child. She refused to look at him. Originally, the toes of one of his feet were fused together, and he had an operation performed where the toe was separated so that he had kind of just two fingers to grab with. And without any limbs, this man has been able to get to a place where he can type 43 words a minute on his computer. He is married. He has four children, 2 sons and 2 daughters, and he travels around the world sharing his story and inspiring people who feel held back in life. He's a reminder to us all today, each one of us in here today, that nothing can hold us back. I want to roll a videotape that's just going to last a couple of minutes. If we could put the lights down, get the volume nice and high, because we've got to hear this. It's just so amazing. Thank you.
I wasn't ready. No arms and no legs, but I'm very thankful that I have my little chicken drumstick here. People freak out when they see me for the first time. It's so cool. I was at a water slide all by myself. Everyone obviously at the bottom of the slide is looking up and waiting for other people to come down, and here I come and they're freaking out. They're like, you know, like this. And I was so tempted to look at myself and go, what happened? You know? There were times where I sort of looked at my life and thinking, well, I can't do this and I can't do that. And you keep on concentrating on the things that you wish you had or the things that you wish you didn't have. And you sort of forget what you do have. And there's no point, I believe, in my life where I wish I had arms and legs, I wish I had arms and legs, I wish I had arms and legs, because wishing won't help. But what I've seen in life are just a couple key principles, and the first thing that I've seen is to be thankful. It's hard to be thankful, man. I tell you, when I was 8 years old, I sort of summed up my life and thought, I'm never going to get married. I'm not going to have a job. I'm not going to have a life of purpose. What kind of a husband am I going to be if I can't even hold my wife's hand? It's a lie to think that you're not good enough. It's a lie to think that you're not worth anything. I can't feel my hands. I love life. You know, so many people come and say, how come you smile so much? And I'm like, well, it's a long story. But it's very simple at the same time. You see, it's very hard to smile sometimes in life. There are things that happen that you don't know and you don't understand, and you don't know if you're going to get through it. You know, you go through your storms in life and you don't know how long this storm is going to be. And today I want to share with you some principles that I've learned in my life that you can use in yours. Being patient is beautiful. I tell you, it's the hardest thing. But I realize I may not have hands to hold my wife's hand, but when the time comes, I'll be able to hold her heart. I don't need hands to hold her heart. You know, it is scary to know how many girls have eating disorders. It is scary to know how many people are just angry at life because of their situation at home and angry at others. It's scary to know how many people actually feel like they're worth nothing. Every single girl right here, right now, I want you to know that you are beautiful. You are gorgeous just the way you are. And you boys, you're the man. On this DVD, I share my experiences in life of how I've overcome challenges and seen a new, fresh perspective in life. To be thankful, to dream big, and to never give up. I speak to children, youth, and adults about key issues and principles that I've applied in my life that has given me the strength to conquer all that comes before me.
And so when I was looking for inspiration, I found that. And as soon as I saw him go down the water slide, I thought, we've got to show that on Sunday. It's so cool. It's really great video, that, isn't it? And it's an example of how nothing can hold us back. You know, when I was looking at our passage today, I was reminded that for 20 plus years of public ministry, Paul had experienced many setback moments. We've been through that over the last couple of years, haven't we? He'd experienced imprisonment, he'd experienced rejection, he'd experienced opposition, he'd experienced betrayal, he'd experienced infighting, he'd experienced health issues, he'd experienced loneliness, he'd experienced physical punishment. And, you know, to a greater or lesser degree, we've all experienced moments in our lives like this, haven't we? We've all experienced moments in our lives like these. And despite all of these setbacks, you know, Paul had come to a place in his life, in his experience, in his walk with Jesus, where determination, faith, hope, and resolve had brought him to a place and a destination in his walk with Jesus where he could say, nothing's going to hold me back. Yeah? He had come to a decision in his heart and his mind that nothing could hold him back. I too really believe, friends, that, you know, when we pursue Jesus with all of our hearts, when we ask for his will for our lives, when we're pursuing him, when we're going after him, and when we're going in the direction he wants us to go in our lives, I really believe that nothing can hold us back, friends. Nothing can hold us back. It doesn't mean that the journey will be easy. Whoever said that following Jesus would be easy? Has anyone found following Jesus easy in here? It's not easy following Christ, is it? So it doesn't mean that, you know, it's going to be easy. It doesn't mean that, it doesn't mean that challenges won't come. My life is full of challenges. I'm sure your lives are full of challenges. It doesn't mean that we will see the way like through a crystal ball and everything will be clear and like we'll be totally led like with this kind of without any pain or any difficulty or any opposition. It doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean that. You know, but it does mean that somehow if we're following God, we'll get to where he needs us to be. And I want to tell you, friends, that sometimes the place where we need to be is not where we think we need to be. We're thinking, oh, God, I need to be over here. And God's like, you need to be over there. And so in the mystery of our walk with God, God is leading us and directing us. And he's often changing direction to get us into the place he wants us to be. And so, as we look at our passage this morning, there are a number of things I want to share from an incredible passage of Scripture this morning. Things that I think can help us in moments when we're feeling held back. Maybe some of you in here, for whatever reason, are feeling held back before, feeling held back at the moment. So before we go any further, I want to read Acts chapter 25, verses 1 to 22. A little bit of a shorter passage today, but it's a good passage, and there's some really, really interesting things in here. So we're going to be reading Acts 25, verses 1 to 22, and it says this. It says, 3 days after arriving in the province, Festus went up from Caesarea to Jerusalem, where the chief priests and the Jewish leaders appeared to him and presented the charges against Paul. They urgently requested Festus as a favor to them to have Paul transferred to Jerusalem, for they were preparing an ambush to kill him along the way. Festus answered, Paul is being held at Caesarea, and I myself am going there soon. Let some of your leaders come with me and press charges against the man if he has done anything wrong. After spending 8 to 10 days with them, he went down to Caesarea, and on the next day he convened the court and ordered that Paul be brought before them. When Paul appeared, the Jews who had come down from Jerusalem stood around him, bringing many serious charges against him, which they could not prove. Then Paul made his defense, I've done nothing wrong against the law of the Jews or against the temple or against Caesar. Festus, wishing to do the Jews a favor, said to Paul, are you willing to go up to Jerusalem and stand trial before me there on these charges? Paul answered, I am now standing before Caesar's court, where I ought to be tried. I have not done any wrong to the Jews, as you yourself know very well. If, however, I am guilty of doing anything deserving death, I do not refuse to die. But if the charges brought against me by these Jews are not true, no one has the right to hand me over to them. I appeal to Caesar. After Festus had conferred with his council, he declared, you have appealed to Caesar, and to Caesar you will go. A few days later, King Agrippa and Bernice arrived in Caesarea to pay their respects to Festus. Since they were spending many days there, Festus discussed Paul's case with the king. He said, there is a man here whom Felix left imprisoned. When I went to Jerusalem, the chief priests and elders of the Jews brought charges against him and asked that he be condemned. I told them that it is not the Roman custom to hand any man over before he has faced his accusers and has had the opportunity to defend himself against their charges. When they came here with me, I did not delay the case, but convened the court the next day and ordered that the man be brought in. When his accusers got up to speak, they did not charge him with any of the crimes I had expected. Instead, they had some points of dispute with him about their own religion and about a dead man named Jesus, who Paul claimed was alive. I was at a loss to know how to investigate such matters, so I asked if he would be willing to go to Jerusalem and stand trial there on these charges. When Paul made his appeal to be held over for the emperor's decision, I ordered him held until he could be sent to Caesar. Then Agrippa said to Festus, I would like to hear this man myself. He replied, tomorrow you will hear him. Well, it's a great passage there. Lots of drama in there. It's a courtroom drama. I mean, we've had courtroom dramas back to back for the last few weeks, haven't we? So Paul just seemed to get in these positions where he was in these courtroom situations, and you've got all this drama unfolding. And so in our passage today, we have Paul still under house arrest in Caesarea. He's under house arrest. He's been there nearly 2 years now, and in that time, there had been a change of governor, a change of Roman governor. Felix had moved on to another province that he was taking care of, and a guy called Porcius Festus was moving in to be the next governor, and that's where we find ourselves here today. And so he firstly takes a trip to Jerusalem to discuss the issue of Paul with the Jewish people, with the Jewish leaders. And at this point in Paul's life, it would appear on the surface of things, as we look at the passage, oh gosh, here's a guy who's being held back. It appears as if he's been held back, doesn't it? He's in a restricted and manipulated situation, but experience taught him, his many experiences years before and all the things that he'd gone through, his experience taught him that manipulation cannot hold us back. And so that's my first point today. Manipulation cannot hold us back. And so how exactly was Paul's situation being manipulated? Well, we just read a little bit about that between verses 1 and 7. And so on arrival in Jerusalem, Festus meets with the Jewish priests and leaders, as I've said already, and brings charges against Paul in verse 2. Then they request that he be brought back that he be brought back over to they then request that Paul is to be brought back over to Jerusalem to be trialed so that they can ambush and kill him. It talks about that in verse 3. And so I was thinking about all these different actions of the Jewish leaders. Within all these actions of the Jewish leaders, you can see a manipulation taking place in our story today. And so we, in our own lives, sorry. So as we go further into the passage, we see a magnified capacity to manipulate the new governor even more. As we go into the passage, we see that the governor actually stays with these Jewish leaders for 10 days. So they've got 10 days to pick away at him and say, Paul did this, Paul did that, Paul did the other. And so we see that in verse 6. And, I was thinking about that. I was thinking about how many incentives must have been offered to the Roman governor Festus in his stay in Jerusalem. On day 11, we're told that he decides to bring some of those leaders back over to Caesarea and to form a court where Paul is to be tried. Yeah? So they make a trip over to Caesarea with Festus and charges are pressed against Paul. And so I was thinking, even on that journey, they've got last-ditch moments to speak into the lives of the governors and the Jewish leaders. They've got last-ditch moments to influence the Jewish leaders in that journey from Jerusalem to Caesarea. And so we learn here that in our lives, we have people all around us who have the potential to manipulate us. I was thinking about our house on a Friday night. On a Friday night, it's a time sometimes of mass manipulation in the Megas household. Our boys love their fried chicken on a Friday night. They don't get it every Friday night, but they love fried chicken. And so every Friday, they'll do everything that they can to get Dad to order an AFC. An AFC, not a KFC, an AFC. Does anyone know what an AFC is in here, if you live in Gatley? Alaska fried chicken, the greatest chicken in Gatley. And so, yes, an AFC, not a KFC. And my boys love an AFC, Alaska in Gatley. And so, I know that it's not the Lord's will that I feed my kids on fried chicken. It's not the Lord's will that they don't eat healthily. But on a Friday night, I want to tell you, manipulation goes to the next level. It's like, Dad, I just want to tidy my room tonight. And by the way, can we get some AFC? Yeah? It's like, Dad, I'll ask for nothing over the weekend, nothing at all, not one thing. But if you could just get me an AFC tonight, yeah? You can choose the movie tonight, Mum and Dad. But can we get an AFC? And then there's guilt. Of course, guilt's the big one, isn't it? When we're in a manipulation situation, people will use guilt, won't they? We've not had an AFC for months, Dad. For ages. You're so mean, Dad. And so the point is this, whatever our purpose is in life, people will try to manipulate us. It's not their fault. We have an enemy, don't we, who works through people who are not surrendered to Jesus. And I want to tell you that on a Friday night, my boys are not surrendered to Jesus. They're surrendered to AFC. Yeah? And so my purpose might be healthy, nutritional food, but that purpose can be thwarted. It's a trivial example, isn't it? But it is an illustration of what's happening in our families, in the school playground, in the school classroom, in the office, in the business meeting, in the boardroom. It's happening in charities. It's happening in local government. It's happening in social services. People around us want their way, and if our purpose gets in their way, they will manipulate people that can influence us to get us off purpose so they can get their way. So true, isn't it? And what I love about the passage that we're looking at this morning is that Paul stood his ground and made his defense in verse 8 of our passage. He's like, I've done nothing wrong here. And I'm not standing for it. I've done nothing wrong. And I think this is a reminder to us, isn't it, to stand up for ourselves when we're being played, when we have to give a defense, when we have to defend ourselves. It's a reminder that in our lives we live in a very real world where those things will have to be a part of our walk with Jesus. My cat Ziggy, he's a big ginger cat, and he's a real soft, he is. And he'll roll over on the patio, for a tummy tickle. But I want to tell you that if the big grey cat comes over the fence from next door, then he is transformed sometimes into a different type of animal. He's a fighter, and he'll fight for his territory. And, we have to learn the balance between gentleness and sometimes like ferocious defense of our purpose and our destiny when people are trying to manipulate us to achieve a different outcome. We're living in an age, in a generation where manipulation is multifaceted. Think of all the manipulation that happens in our lives. Digital manipulation, algorithms. We're being manipulated all the time on our digital platforms, aren't we? You think of the cultural context in which we live and how we've shifted so far from like a Christendom and a Christian worldview to a worldview where we literally don't know where we're going now. Yeah? A cultural manipulation. What about financial manipulation? We're all being told our house prices are going to drop. I want to suggest that if they do drop, there's going to be a few winners there. And there's lots of manipulation in finance, in the area of finance, isn't there? I was thinking about visual manipulation and the amount of visual images that come across our eyes day by day on social media platforms, telling us we need to be this and we need to be that and we need to be something else that we're not. And so the image of God in us, that God wants to form in us, gets so distorted. And God's like, I don't want you to be like that. I want you to be you. I want you to be you, the you I made you to be. So visual manipulation, oral manipulation. I read a book recently. There's some really good stuff in it. But after I read it, I felt quite down. I felt quite down because some of the stuff in there, academically it was good, but it wasn't kingdom. It wasn't kingdom. And so I was at a leaders thing recently. I just remember this guy saying to us, be careful what you listen to. Be careful what you listen to, because, you know, it's stuff we listen to there can be like, you know, kind of 90% truth in it, and then 10% that is just absolute nonsense. And we take the 100% rather than the 90% and discarding the 10. This is the world we live in, oral manipulation. So we've got to be careful about orally, kind of what we're listening to, what we're processing, what we're taking in. What about relational manipulation? I want to say to you that in my relationship of over 20 years marriage, I want to say I've never been manipulated or played by this one here. Never once. I'm joking. I'm joking, because that's the real world. We manipulate each other sometimes, you know. Can you iron my shirt this morning, Katie? Yeah. Sensual manipulation. Very sensual world now, isn't it? Appealing to the senses all the time. So we've got to be on it with this stuff, because we're literally, from the moment we pick up our phones in the morning, or when we switch our TV screens on, or if we get a newspaper, which no one gets a newspaper anymore, do they? Everyone's digital. Or the conversations that we have, we enter a zone of manipulation. It's just the world that we live in. And so we've got to get wise to that, haven't we? You're thinking about geopolitical manipulation, like what's happened over the weekend with Putin. It's like astonishing, isn't it? You know, one of the Wagner guy trying to manipulate things, and so that's another example of manipulation in our world. You know, whatever manipulation looks like. You know, I believe that when we're pursuing Jesus Christ, we know what needs defending. We know what needs defending, yeah? And manipulation actually can't hold us back. It can't hold us back. The second thing we see from our passage today is that this is coolness. Location cannot hold you back. Your location cannot hold you back. The second thing we see is that. And so we're looking at AD 58 here. Paul has been doing what he's been doing for about 25 years, church planting, telling people about Jesus, building churches, building leadership structures in churches, setting the world on fire. And at this season, Paul could have concluded, maybe I've come to the end of the race, he could have concluded that his fixed location, imprisonment in Caesarea, the place he was in his life at that moment, was a hindrance and a great injustice. I think when things don't go right for us, we can be like, what a hindrance, what a great injustice. You know, I think all of us, and I think Paul could have done this as well, have the propensity to give ourselves over to self-loathing and depression. You know, after 2 years in Caesarea, he's been 2 years under house arrest at this point. He might have begun to muse. He may have thought, you know, what would it look like if I just went home to Jerusalem, where it all started, if I just went back? You know, I'm not getting much done here. It's been 2 years. I've been on hold. You know, I think in moments when we feel paralyzed in our current situation, there can be this sense in all of us, can't there, if we're honest? Disillusionment, sometimes despair. And you know, we can begin to think, maybe I'm in the wrong location. Maybe I'm in the wrong location. You know, in these moments, we have to have great discernment, friends, because difficult moments are often times when lots of offers come flooding in. You know, we get moved and we settle, and before we're settled, we're moving again because we have become slaves to a more palatable offer and an easier location. Yeah? We become disillusioned with our location in life and start looking backward into the past. I was reading Genesis this week, and I was reminded of that with Lot's wife, who looked back, of course. And so this happens to Paul in verse 9. You know, Festus asked Paul if he's willing to go to Jerusalem and stand trial in Jerusalem. You get a fair hearing there, he's saying. And at these moments, you know, where we get offers, I think we have to rediscover the things and the purpose that led us to our current location. Yeah? I think we have to do that. We then have to assess what our next moves are going to look like. Yeah? And so Paul understood in these moments that a return trip to Jerusalem was a wrong step for him. Just sensed it in the spirit, knew actually prophetically where God was sending him. And so I was thinking, why did he have that clarity of understanding? I think he had that clarity of understanding because his destiny in life as a church planting apostle was to advance and not to retreat. And so, friends, in our walk with Jesus, we often lose our purpose. We often lose our excitement. We often lose our vision of advancement in our lives and our purpose in our walk with Jesus. I think that can happen from time to time. And as a Christian, you've got to get it back. You've got to get your purpose back. You've got to get the reason you were saved and called to follow Jesus back. You know, we often lose a sense of the purpose God has for our lives in the location we're in right now. We forget that our current location, although, you know, it might be mundane from time to time, that current location that we're in right now is preparing us to go forward somewhere, but not to retreat. Yeah? So where are you today? Do you see your location as holding you back? God says, don't go back. Don't look back. Don't go back. God says, use your location to take you into your purpose in Him. Yeah? Don't think that your location is holding you back. The location isn't holding us back, friends. Look forward to where your location will launch you next. Look forward. Look forward. You know, I've got two sets of friends. And I've got some friends who emigrated to Australia about 20 years ago. And, you know, in the first couple of years of their move, my friend Jono really found it hard to get work. It was a real struggle for him, adjusting and getting used to that. Really tough for them adjusting. But they pressed on, and they both now have very influential jobs. They both have a lot of purpose in their lives. But, you know, I also have some friends in Somerset who moved from like a farming town area to a coastal area in Devon, like a really prosperous, you know, kind of exciting coastal area in Devon. And you know, within a few years that they'd moved back to their farm town. And my friends who went to Australia, they've really thrived. They've really seen their lives take off. But I think my friends in Somerset have been stunted by a backward move. I think they have. And so the point is this, you know, we can swap opportunity for familiarity. We can miss using our moments of challenge and discomfort and frustration as opportunities for advancement. So Paul, discerning that his location was not holding him back, even if the location was challenging, you know, Paul knew that his current location in Caesar's court was the place where he should be tried in order for him to advance. He'd done nothing wrong. He'd refused to let doubt over his location load him with guilt, verse 11. He knew what his rights were in the location he was operating from. And so Paul refused to let his circumstances rob him of adventure and purpose. He appealed to Caesar in verse 11. And in verse 12, he's going to Caesar. He recognized that instead of his location holding him back, his location was actually advancing him into his purpose for Jesus. And so, how are you viewing your location today? How are you viewing your location today? Are you viewing your location negatively, or are you viewing it purposefully? You know, we need to understand, friends, that our location is never the thing that holds us back. Our location, if we'll look at it with new eyes, will take us into a place of purpose. Location always offers opportunity. And that's what we see happen in the final section of our passage today. The final thing we see in our passage today is that, and I love this, opportunities multiply as they are taken. Opportunities multiply as they are taken. It's a kingdom principle. The final thing we see is that thing. And so what we observe between verses 13 and 22 is that Paul, in this moment in his life, and in this transition to where God is taking him next in his destiny and purpose, is not held back from doing the thing that he loved the most, sharing Jesus. And so as Paul, from his current location, makes a choice to go to Rome, opportunities multiply, friends. He gets an opportunity to share the gospel with King Agrippa and Queen Bernice in verse 22. Agrippa says to Festus, I'd like to hear this man myself. Tomorrow, he said, you will hear him. It's just great, that, isn't it? So Paul, rather than retreating to the familiarity of Jerusalem, a city, a place that he knew, people that he knew, instead of retreating to that familiarity, he presses on purposefully into the opportunity ahead of him in Rome. And, so I was thinking about that. I was thinking that, we in our own lives will only ever see opportunities multiply in our lives when we choose a destination that requires us to take on a new opportunity in faith. Yeah? We will only ever see opportunities multiply in our lives when we choose a destination that requires to take on a new opportunity in faith. And this is because opportunities multiply as they are taken. I was listening to Pastor Glyn Barrett from Audacious Church a couple of months ago, and it came back to me something that he said. He was explaining that he'd returned from a sabbatical, and he checked his email, and he noticed that he'd been invited to Buckingham Palace for an audience with the king. And so he thought it was a hoax. He asked his mates, what's going on? Is this a hoax? No, it looks real. It looks genuine. And so it turned out it wasn't a hoax. And he ended up going to Buckingham Palace. He'd been invited to be part of the pre-procession at the Queen's state funeral as a representative of the church, of the clergy in the UK. And so he went to Westminster Abbey to talk with the king. And so I was thinking about that, out of a fixed location on sabbatical, at the end of his sabbatical, an opportunity came, and so he took the opportunity. And so opportunity for him multiplied because he took it, yeah? Last week I got a letter from the mayor of Stockport, and I've been asked to attend the mayor's kind of inauguration thing. And he happens to be my next door neighbour, actually. He's a lovely guy. And I'm going to go in July because I know that opportunities multiply as they're taken. Yeah? Opportunities multiply as they are taken. And so, and so good things come out of opportunities that are taken in our lives, don't they? And so, something good will come out of that, yeah? Next year I might visit the king. Who knows? I don't think I'd want to, actually, but no, I won't mind visiting Charlie, have a cup of tea with him. But, friends, when we step into God-ordained opportunity, it multiplies as we take it, yeah? It multiplies as we take it. Maybe today you have a unique opportunity that's presented itself to you right now, a job promotion. Someone's invited you for dinner. You've had a dinner offer. You've had an invitation to the gym. You've had, a training opportunity come your way at work. You've had a chance to share Jesus with someone, or you've got a chance. I think that if we sense things are from the Lord, if it's progressive and it's taking us somewhere, if it's putting Jesus on display somehow, let's be people who see these things as key opportunities in our lives, yeah? See what God will do with your faith and watch him multiply your opportunity. And so, friends, I don't know about you guys, but I want to live out of a place in my life where I just don't miss any opportunities for Jesus. I don't miss opportunity for my family. I don't miss opportunity for life and for flourishing. Opportunity to sit with people who need to hear the gospel. Friends, we need to learn to be the guest sometimes and not just the host. You know, if someone invites you to something, you've got to seriously consider, okay, should I go? We've got to learn to be the guest and not just the host. We need to spend more time with people outside of church to let our light shine. Look for opportunities to do these things. And so what lives can you touch? Because I believe that opportunities multiply as they are taken. And I believe that in all of these things, nothing can hold us back. You know, next week, we're going to look at what happens to Paul as he stands before King Agrippa, Herod Agrippa. But for now, I want to close with this summary. I want to remind you what we've been talking about this morning, that God wants you to know that nothing can hold you back. He wants you to know that nothing can hold you back. He wants you to know that manipulation cannot hold you back. He wants you to know that the location you're in right now cannot hold you back. He wants you to know that opportunities multiply as they are taken. And so, friends, we serve the same God as Nick Vujicic, the guy we saw in the video at the start of our sermon today. And I think his life speaks over our lives today and says, do you know what? Nothing can hold us back, can it? You know, when you look at what that guy's doing in his life and how he's thriving and he's got no arms and no legs, I want to tell you, nothing can hold us back, friends. So whatever situation you're in right now, I want you to be encouraged in the place you're at right now and to really believe this of God, that nothing can hold us back. You know, if God's got something for us to do, it might not pan out the way we want it to do. We want it to. It might not work out the way we want it to. The route to get into the solution or the problem or the destination might not be the same route that we would take. There might be lots of diversions along the way. There might be lots of fights along the way. There might be lots of disappointment along the way. There might be real pain along the way. There might be rejection along the way. But somehow, God is going to get us into the place he wants to get us to, because nothing can hold back the plan of God. I want to tell you, he loves you. He's over your life. He wants you to thrive. He wants you to flourish. He wants you to be go-getters. He wants you to achieve massive things in the kingdom. He wants to equip you. He wants to do immeasurably more than you can ask or imagine. I want to tell you he's for you. I want you to be encouraged. I want you to go away this day and think, do you know what? Paul's heading to Rome. Paul's heading to Rome. For 3 chapters now, he's been prophesying or speaking a vision of his heart for Rome, because he knows that if he can get to the heart of the empire, he can change a generation. He can change multiple generations. He can change the world. He can make the message of Jesus global. That's what Paul's pressing into here. And so look at all the twists and turns he's been on in this journey, but with nothing holding him back. I want you to be encouraged. No matter what twists and turns have happened in your life, no matter how difficult things have been, if God's put something on your heart, something on your life, something of a kind of life thing that he wants you to achieve or accomplish, I want to say keep going at it, keep pushing into it. No matter what happens, go after it and make a decision in your heart like Paul. Nothing is going to hold me back. So God bless you. And we're going to invite the worship band up just now, and I'm going to pray as we close. So maybe this morning, you're in here for the first time and you just know nothing but holdbacks and nothing but difficulties and nothing but, not being able to get to the place that you want to be. Maybe this is the first time you've heard about Jesus and you've been held back from hearing